Welcome back to another segment of License to Legacy. I'm host Javi Trujillo, and joining me once again is Bill Koenig of the Spy Command. How are you today, Bill?
Very good, Javi. Thanks for asking.
And of course, Mr. David Lee from the James Bond dossier is here as well. How do you do, David? Have you recovered from the unfair treatment Lewis Hamilton got at the Mexican Grand Prix yesterday?
I have been nursing my wounds all day, I'm afraid. Yeah. So, I'm sure not as much as he's been nursing his own wounds, but
the interview that I saw with him post-race was just disheartening, to say the least.
Well, here in the Detroit area, sports talk station, which never mentions F1, they were taking texts from readers, champ and chump of the week. And so somebody texted in Jump, F1 for making the rules up as they go along. I assume it's in relation. Like, they never talk about F1. That was so much they felt compelled to. A listener did.
That was a very chaotic first few opening laps, to be sure. And my fiance was taking a nap at the time. And the moment that Max went off the track the first time, I yelled so loud I thought I would have woken her up,
me too.
Because I was so excited.
Yeah,
and it just as Ferrari get their act together.
Yeah. Unfortunate penalties.
Yeah,
played a part. But that's not why we're here today. As much as I love talking F1 with you gentlemen, let's get down to business. We're here to talk about the 40th anniversary of A View to a Kill. A View to a Kill was released in wide release in the United States May 24th, 1985, after its San Francisco premiere of May 22nd. In the UK, it got a wide release of June 13th, with its premiere being June 12th, which is, I wanted to point that out specifically because that's quite a departure from the modern day where that we've talked about on other podcasts where it's been flipped now, where the UK will get it at least 2 weeks before the US. And there was something about this film in particular because so much of it was shot in San Francisco that they did get to host the premiere before anyone else.
Right. And Roger Moore commented how Dianne Feinstein, who was
mayor
at the time, she would later be a U.S. senator. As he put it, she was one of the rare people who preferred me over Sean.
Yeah.
That's in the documentary that's part of the home video release. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that in a few places where she was his preferred Bond and so granted them carte blanche to do all sorts of things over the city, including shooting in City Hall. From a financial standpoint, the U.S. domestic box office was $50 million. The international was 102, so a worldwide total of 152. Now, this was down 17 million domestically and 35 million worldwide from Octopussy. So unfortunately, Moore didn't go out on an all-time high. But looking at the numbers.com, worldwide unadjusted, it's 18th, just below License to Kill and above Thunderball. And again, this is unadjusted. Because as we talked about on our last License to Legacy, it's a very different story when you adjust for inflation and ticket prices with Thunderball. Like that is like the king. But unadjusted, A View to a Kill did much better. So we were all alive when this movie came out. When did you first see it, Bill?
I saw it the Thursday night before the formal opening. In those days, that kind of thing was fairly rare, because now Thursday night previews, it's just part of the deal.
That's how it's done, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember Was it
a press screening?
No, it was a general screening. So anyway, because I remember I had some kind of work assignment out of town. I had to kind of hustle to get back in time to catch the showing. I was aware of it. My wife and I, we had tickets. And the reason I'm pretty sure it was a Thursday showing was because in those days, PBS had a movie review show. It was originally done by Siskel and Ebert, but they had switched outlets. They had switched over to commercial TV. But PBS kept that show going, at least at the time, with a couple of new hosts. So I watched I watched their show the same night that I had seen the movie. So it's like one of those times, the movie's fresh in my mind, and now I'm watching this review show, and they trashed it. I wish I could remember who the critics were. I think Jeffrey Lyon might have been one of them, but I'm not 100% sure. But I was like, whoa, that's pretty tough. So, but yeah, I saw it right at the start when I could get there.
David, how about you?
I actually don't remember the first time I saw it. I have no memory of it at all. I can remember all the promotion of the film, and I can remember Duran Duran being on TV all the time with the video for it and so on. But I just can't remember. I cannot remember going to see it at all. The only thing I can remember is that I hate this movie.
From the get-go?
Yeah, I've never liked
Really?
it. No, I can't stand it. It's it pretty much came close to finishing my interest in the Bond movies.
Wow. Okay. Well, I first saw it in 85, I would imagine. It was in the theater. I was 8 years old. It would have been a family affair where we all went to the dollar theater. So it would have been out for a few months by the time it got down to the cheap seats. And 8-year-old me really enjoyed it because it was a Bond film. And just to give you an idea of how naive we are as children, when in the pre-title sequence, when he does his snowboarding and they play a cover, which I didn't understand that it was a cover at the time, of the Beach Boys' California Girls, like I got really excited for that because we listened to the Beach Boys all the time growing up. And like we had this cassette, Endless Summer, that like lived in our car of like Beach Boys chart topping hits. And, I remember asking, my dad to put that song on. And anytime I heard that song growing up, I would think of James Bond. And
Okay.
At 8 years old, like it was the coolest thing. And when I started rewatching the movies around 17, 18, didn't quite age as well for me as it did 8-year-old me. But, it is one of those ones where I did get to see it theatrically, did leave an impression on me. Being, in America. And now I hadn't been to San Francisco at that point. It would be a few more years before I'd go for the first time. But, it was one of those connections that I had early on of like, I've been to like a Bond location. So that brings me to my next question. And I'm going to start with you, David, because I imagine it's going to be a pretty short answer. How often do you rewatch it?
Not very often at all. And God, if I watch it once more in my life, then it just confirms that I am an absolute masochist. I find it so painful to watch. I just don't enjoy it at all.
Not even in like just putting on a scene? Do you have like a favorite scene that you go back to? Just to watch?
I don't. No,
I
don't.
Nothing's redeemable about this.
No, this is a film which at every level fails for me.
Bill, how about you?
Not so often in terms of watching the whole movie. I will occasionally watch some scenes, or I might watch the accompanying documentary on the home video. That's a half hour of your time, so it's not like watching 2 hours. It's also watching that documentary is interesting. Watching the makers of the documentary kind of dance around, because I know. Well, one time, this was on Facebook. It wasn't John Cork; it was one of his associates, and he was commenting about a Bond movie he didn't like. He didn't get a whole lot of details. And then I replied, I said, it's like, this is a genuine question. I'm not trying to troll you. But when you're working on one of those documentaries and you don't like the movie, what is that like? And I remember what he replied was, well, you have to remember, it's somebody's favorite James Bond movie. So you have to like treat it with a fair amount of respect. Not fair amount, you have to treat it with respect. Yeah. I'm a little more forgiving than David, but that's relative. I had my ups and downs with it. I remember I saw the teaser trailer. It was attached in late 1984 to 2010, which was the sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I had some misgivings, like Roger Moore's coming back. But then I was watching that teaser trailer. I thought, I think he's went on a diet because he looked, thinner and more trim.
Mm.
And then I was also intrigued by the fact that Patrick Macnee was going to be in the cast.
Yeah,
so
I was going to ask you about that.
So you've had 3 of his co-stars in the Avengers, Honor Blackman, Diana Rigg, and Joanna Lumley, also be in Bond movies. So I thought, well, that's fitting. It's like, might as well get him in there. So that was interesting. And then I almost never watched MTV, but I happened to have it on when they had the premiere of the music video that included a Roger Moore gun barrel, and it opens up on the Eiffel Tower, and you actually see a fair amount of that scene at the Eiffel Tower before the song begins. So I thought, well, this is interesting. We'll see how it goes. And then the first time I saw it in the theater, for like the first 2 or 3 minutes, I'm thinking, well, this is pretty good. This might actually be one of the classics, with the skiing scenes and the John Barry music and stuff. And then we had the Beach Boys song. I mean, I know it was performed by somebody else. It's like, oh, that's, it's like, taking sticking a knife in a tire, watching the tire deflate. It's kind of how I was feeling. Although I thought once they got past that, well, okay, they ended the pre-titles well. But then I thought, they're going a little overboard with the humor. I mean, I know humor in Bond movies can be delicate, but like that submarine that picks him up, forgive me for phrasing it this way, but I mean, it looked like an upside down penis. It's like, okay, this is not a coincidence. This is just me projecting something. It's, clearly looks like an upside down penis and like that. But then there were high points in the movie too. I thought when Patrick Macnee's character got killed, turns out he was the sacrificial lamb. Okay, that kind of got me back into it, but
I used a car wash last week.
Yeah.
And just, how it goes, to the sides of the car and the back. Like there were 2 moments where the thing moving caught my peripheral and I was having View to a Kill flashbacks and getting a little paranoid in the car wash. And I don't know if it was because we've been talking about doing this episode, but it was very foremost in my mind. Poor Tybalt.
Well, you made it here today, so it must be a good ending. Yeah. But
the Patrick Macnee of it all doesn't cause you to watch it more than the other Moore movies, Bill? Having that Avengers connection?
Well, I mean, I like Patrick Macnee. And for Patrick Macnee, this was something of an Avengers reunion. Lois Maxwell had been in an episode. That was during the Honor Blackman days. And Robert Brown he was in the very first Diana Rigg episode. He was a villain. He had a beard, looked appropriately sinister. I rewatched part of it this morning as we record this. And like he and Patrick Macnee even had a short fight scene. And the director of photography for this movie was Alan Hume. This was his 3rd Bond movie in a row. And he photographed a few episodes of The Avengers. So, I imagine Patrick Macnee had a pretty good time. He also was a friend of Roger Moore's. He was doing The Avengers when Roger Moore was doing The Saints. So I imagine he had a good time. But despite all that, and also John Barry does do a pretty good job with the music. But there's, like I said, it has its ups and it has some downs. And another down thing was the Dick Tracy joke.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was like, they probably should have cut that out. Anyway, you can like elements of something, but still not like the whole, or not like the whole as much. I did think also the climax in the mineshaft part, I thought was pretty interesting, and Christopher Walken was appropriately sinister, even though he was not their first choice for the role. The first choice was David Bowie, and in the stage directions of the script, there's a description of Zorin says that his eyes are 2 different colors. Well, David Bowie had eyes of 2 different colors. Now, that's how much they wanted him, but he turned him down, and they had to settle for Christopher Walken, which, he's a good actor.
Settle for Christopher Walken.
Yeah, I know. It does sound ridiculous, doesn't it? But
yeah.
Well, it's like Dr. No. It's like they wanted, Ian Fleming at least wanted Noel Coward.
Yeah.
Had to, quote, settle for Joseph Wiseman.
I don't feel like I rewatch it too much these days, but I mean, just in general, like the more ones for me probably get rewatched the least. But I do love the climax on the Golden Gate. That's always been something that I gravitated towards since I was a kid. I like, although it gets kind of convoluted, the whole infiltrating the horse auctions and him being in that social setting and that kind of Bond villain dance that they do where each one knows the other one's got a secret or there, but they always have that facade of being polite and being civilized in front of people. Like there are elements of it that I really do like. But in terms of where I rank it, like top, middle, or bottom, something's got to be in the bottom. And I definitely don't feel as dispassionate towards it as you two. I mean, this is in the bottom tier of Bond movies for me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar for both of you?
This is my very bottom film by a long way. Yeah. So yeah, you could say it. You could say it's one of my least favorites. Yeah.
I'd have to put it toward the bottom. I can think of one or two that I might be competition. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think Roger stayed one movie too long. If you said that to me, I would not be in a position to argue with you. In fact, with Octopussy, there had been some prolonged negotiations before he went back. I mean, they'd gone to the trouble of bringing in James Brolin and doing extensive screen tests with him before they went with Roger Moore because of Sean Connery and Never Say Never Again. But then all of a sudden with the seventh movie, he's back. He's like, there's like none of that contention. He's coming back. And this is strictly speculation on my part. I kind of wonder if this was sort of Cubby Broccoli's way of rewarding him because Octopussy did better at the box office than Never Say Never Again.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a reward. Again, strictly speculation. I know nothing to say that's the truth, but you got to wonder. At least I do.
Yeah. Steering the conversation more to a positive aspect, I want to talk about the music for a little bit. This score carries forward the legacy of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which isn't the first time that the Moore era has recognized that film. And as much as people chat about like No Time to Die or the Spectre and First Light trailers utilizing part of the Majesty's theme, it's not a new phenomenon. It happened here first in that pre-title sequence and then at the end music as well. You just get that dum, 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 and, woven through the score, and you've got the title song from Duran Duran, which hit number 1 in the U.S. David, how do you, obviously you don't like the movie, but how do you feel about the score? I mean, John Barry's score is better than no John Barry score.
Yes, that's true. I agree with that completely, but I'm really not that familiar with the score.
Because you watch it so infrequent? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't make a point of watching this movie. I've never bothered to sit down and listen to the score because I just don't want flashbacks of watching the movie, I guess, while I'm listening. The theme song, I've always detested Duran Duran, so it's not a winner for me. No, I remember very, very strongly in 1985 that was not the kind of music that I was into at all. I don't mind some of their earlier stuff, but by the time of 1985 and A View to a Kill, I just couldn't stand them. Not my cup of tea at all, as I say.
Bill, how do you feel about the music?
I have the soundtrack. I have it on vinyl because I bought it when it first came out, and I've listened to it. I probably have listened to it more than I've watched the movie in recent years. I think it's John Barry. It's great. I like to think that it wasn't his idea to have the Beach Boys song on. I'll have to reread that Music of James Bond book sometime. Like, just how did that happen?
Okay. Yeah, but probably what I should do is actually listen to the music at some point without the film and see how I cope with that. And if you get any kind of manic messages from me,
Yeah.
you'll know why.
Help me, signed David.
I really like the song. I think it's, pretty much for me, it's on par with Live and Let Die. And I feel like more starts and ends the era musically on, no pun intended, like a high note. I really, really don't like All Time High. For Your Eyes Only isn't one of my favorite songs either. So hedging back to this, rock sound, like I really appreciate that. I used to listen to it all the time in the mid 90s from the we just talked about it too, that Best of Bond 35th anniversary soundtrack. So that one got a lot of play for me. I wouldn't say this is one of my favorite Barry scores, but it is his penultimate, and there is a lot of it that I like. It's just the usual Barry stuff of repeating motifs and just the Barry sound, which is a little more orchestral compared to how brassy the Connery ones were, but like I said, it's still John Barry, so that's good enough for me.
And Barry did a good job of intermingling the Duran Duran, the music to the song, into his score. So like
romantic versions and action versions.
Yeah, like for example, at the end on the Golden Gate Bridge, when the blimp is tied up and Zorin's getting out of the blimp to go after Bond. He's got the axe. You can hear strains of the Duran Duran song in that sequence, and it's good. Do we want to talk about Tanya Roberts or not?
Let's not. Let's talk. I mean, we can. The legacy of Bond women in this film. You have Mayday, Grace Jones, who is to me, she was very memorable. I don't know if I knew her because of Bond or she was just such a presence at the time that I knew of her before going into this movie. Because like I said, I was 8, so I didn't really have a big choice in what music we listened to. But if I didn't know her before the movie, I definitely knew her after the movie. And she did a few other movies around this time as well. Was she in Red Sonja, or was it this Conan the Destroyer? Anyways.
That genre.
Yeah, she had a big presence as the henchwoman, and to me, she was memorable. Is she an Odd Job or Jaws level? I'm not sure, but like a lot of the posters were based on her, like the marketing, like has James Bond met his match, and it was trying to pit him against Mayday. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have Stacey Sutton, who is very much in the help me James.
Mm-hmm.
Book smart, but I can't notice a giant sub.
Help me, James!
Yeah. I can't notice the giant blimp that's sneaking up behind me.
Yeah.
So, a big mixed bag for women's representation in this film.
I think with Grace Jones and Mayday, one of the things that I find curious about her is that she doesn't actually seem to be playing a character at all.
Just herself.
Yeah, persona. Exactly. Or her public persona, because she, I did know her from, there was a very famous television interview she did in the UK where she got fed up with the interviewer and she started slapping him with her gloves at the end and stuff like that. And I'm sure you can find that on YouTube. And, I did know some of her music. And she did a cover version of Warm Leatherette, which is a thing based on the novel Crash, which later was a Cronenberg movie, I think. Are you following me at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And anyways, so
not to be confused with Paul Haggis's Crash.
A different movie completely. It was about basically it was about this guy who gets off by watching automobile accidents and so on. And so this song was kind of based on that. So her public persona was quite aggressive, and I didn't really see any difference between Mayday and Grace Jones. I mean, I'm sure she's very, very different if you meet her socially, but her public persona at the time was quite a tough one.
Well, also about Mayday, it's kind of implied, but they don't come out and say it, that she's on the kind of steroids that Zorin's horses are on, because Pegasus, I think was the horse's name,
Yeah.
wins the race, is jittery and jumping up, and Mayday reins him in. And Q remarks, "Oh, she must take a lot of vitamins."
That's right. Yeah.
I kind of wondered if she was supposed to be, because again, they say, Zorin was part of these experiments in Nazi Germany. And like, was she, she would not have been part of those experiments, but, some of the same stuff that Zorin was on or his horses were on, was she on? Because then in the climax, when they got to get the detonator off all those explosives, and Bond is doing his best. No, Bond is on the contraption, and she is lowering him, and it's like, she doesn't look, super strength, but she must be.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's kind of thrown away, the whole concept of them being somehow genetically engineered because of Nazi Germany experiments in the 40s, and it gets a brief mention, and it gets talked about in earlier drafts, but it doesn't really play beyond the horse aspect of everything. It kind of gets dropped in the film itself.
Yeah.
As we remake Goldfinger for the second part of the movie.
Right. So just one other quick thing about Tanya Roberts. I was making a joke earlier, and I feel a little bad because, of course, she met a rather sad end.
Yeah.
Where it's like, she's dead. No, she's not dead. Oh, she's dead. That was a roller coaster. And I forget the details. She wasn't that old when she died. So she's 65 maybe. Anyway, I just want to make clear that I was making fun of the movie as opposed to making fun of the person. So I should add that.
But there wasn't a lot of chemistry, I feel like, between her and Sir Raj, and definitely between Moore and Grace Jones. If you go by what was said behind the scenes, they did not get along well at all. Supposedly, in that first scene, the first scene where Mayday is walking naked toward him in the bed, supposedly, Roger Moore was known for playing practical jokes on the set, and that she, knowing that, there's no delicate way of phrasing this, strapped a dildo to herself when she's walking, of course. So thus outdoing the master of the practical joke on set. Sorry about that. Speaking of, actors and co-stars, according to IMDb, Christopher Walken is the first Oscar winner to star in a Bond movie. He won for The Deer Hunter in 1978. Much like Marlon Brando in Superman, did Walken open the door for others to take a look and consider joining the franchise? Is this a precursor to the Barbara Broccoli era of getting people like Javier Bardem and Rami Malek and all these other Academy Award nominated and winning actors like Christoph Waltz to join the franchise?
That's a really interesting question, and I have absolutely no idea. But I think one thing that they have in common is that I don't like any of them as villains. So make of that what you will.
Okay. I think that it didn't set an immediate precedent. And certainly, other people have started in Bond and then achieved their success afterwards, like Benicio del Toro and Michelle Yeoh. But definitely in the Barbara Broccoli era, there has been a lean more towards Academy Award winners and Oscar bait, trying to get talent beyond just a song or technical merits to get more recognition. And she was a very young producer on this film. Real quick,
Robert Shaw was nominated for Best Supporting Actor Oscar, but that was after From Russia with Love. It was for A Man for All Seasons. So,
okay.
Yeah, and I forget Barbara Broccoli's title. It wasn't exactly a producer, at least. It was even associate. That would be the next movie.
It was like something like that.
Executive assistant or something. She's in the end title scroll. Whereupon in the next movie, The Living Daylights, she would be associate producer along with Tom Pevsner.
He of the Pevsner Hotel fame.
Going back to your question about, did Christopher Walken and the decision to cast him, did he influence the, Bardem and Rami Malek and so on? Well, having digested that question a bit more now, I would say really that with the Daniel Craig era, the thing that really shook them, it stunned them, was that the producers, Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, was the fact that they, for the first time, really had commercial and critical acclaim. And it was that, I think, that really gave them the idea of starting to look at auteur directors and probably looking at casting, real A-lister actors. So I think maybe that comes from there rather than Christopher Walken, but who knows?
The other thing about Christopher Walken is, this movie came out in '85. He had been acting on a very regular basis since at least 1970, and he's always had an edge, and that edge is obviously very present in this film. One of his earliest acting appearances was actually on the Hawaii Five-0 television show.
Really?
In an episode in 1970. And I have the series on DVD, and he's definitely got that edge. And he was also in the Anderson tapes with Sean Connery, which was 71. And one other odd thing, of course, here his name is Max Zorin, and he would show up in 1989 in the first Michael Keaton Batman. No, second, 92.
Batman Returns.
Yeah, Batman Returns. His name was Max there, too, which I always thought was kind of amusing.
But there he was Max Schreck, which was an homage to the actor who played Nosferatu in the original. But I think the biggest aspect of legacy for this film, as we talk about it 40 years later, is that this is the final Roger Moore Bond film. Moore was 58 when this was released. And to compare, Daniel Craig was 53 when his final film came out. Connery was 41 or 53, depending on how you want to look at it, if you're Eon or non-Eon. Pierce was 49.
41 for Eon, 53 for Never Say Never Again.
Yeah. Pierce was 49. Tim was 43. And George was the ancient age of 30.
Good grief.
So he still is the oldest Bond on film. And while Moore has the Eon record of 7, he was only Bond for 12 years. And if you compare that to Daniel Craig's 15 years, but 5 films. So how long do you think an actor should retain the crown as we enter in this new era of Bond?
Good. I have a theory that the audience, the general audience, not hardcore Bond fans, I think after about 10 years, I think it's like, okay, time for a new Bond now. I think they're kind of conditioned to that.
Yeah.
Because what are the bookmakers saying?
Well, I ignore the bookmakers on that, but it's like, how long?
We're talking about the general film-going population rather than Bond fans. So,
well, I'm not talking about bookmakers either. But anyway, I was going to say, how many years have we had these stories? Who will be the next Bond after Daniel Craig? When he's not giving up the role yet. Part of it was all those, number of lengthy delays between some of Craig's films, but still, it's like, Craig had shown no sign of necessarily getting ready to leave the role, and part of it's modern day media with clickbait and stuff. So it's always a way of getting the clicks to speculate about who'll be the next James Bond. But I do kind of wonder if 10 years is kind of it in a general sense.
No, I think that's a good benchmark to hit. Making the movies, particularly in this modern era, takes a toll, both physically and emotionally. We definitely saw that with Connery, although Connery was making, for the first 3, he made a movie. For the first 4, he made a movie a year.
Yeah.
And that was really hard, obviously. But I think that, it leads to a certain amount of burnout. Daniel Craig definitely had a nice, well, nice is relative, but he definitely had gaps to do other things in between. And I feel like looking at Roger Moore, like he's kind of like the unicorn of everything. Like he always comes off as so laid back. And after he left, he was such an ambassador for the role going forward. Like he never seemed to mind to talk about Bond or those connections, and kind of relished, his status. I feel like he had a different temperament when it came to that we don't see in a lot of other people. But even he acknowledged that he probably shouldn't have done the last one. I think 10 years is a good gap, or a good stint. And Pierce definitely didn't get that landmark, but I think that's probably when it's time to freshen things up for a new generation. David, what do you feel?
Yeah, I think, in the books, Bond was in his eternal mid-30s, and I think once you get too far away from that and you stretch what the actor is doing on screen, like Roger Moore in this film, for instance, then it becomes too divorced from reality. You can't really believe that the character is doing what he's doing. So that's the time to change.
I mean, they're supposed to be eternal, these characters.
Yeah.
But we as people are not. And, if you look at something like Rocky or Indiana Jones, where age becomes part of the later stories in the movies and having to overcome that. But just people can't do in their 60s what they could do in their 30s. It doesn't matter who you are. And when you come here for the thrill of, the action set pieces, you're not getting a lot of that if that actor doesn't look believable in the part. And I remember reading some article in one of the Bond books I own where they were talking about a critic who was joking about View to a Kill starring Roger Moore and his stunt doubles.
Well, and Mad Magazine did a parody. It wasn't a View to a Kill. It might have been For Your Eyes Only, where the last panel is Bond and his various stunt doubles, including the sex stunt double. That was the gag. I was also going to say, with Roger Moore, in For Your Eyes Only and Octopussy, it is implied he is an older character, but they don't rub your nose in it. Because in For Your Eyes Only, he goes to the cemetery. It has the date of death for Tracy in 1969 when that movie came out. So he has to be older than his mid-30s, because it's now 1981. But they don't dwell on it too much, but it's definitely implied. And then with Octopussy, the relationship between Bond and VJ, clearly, it's like Bond's kind of taken on VJ as kind of a protege. Mm. And it helps that Roger Moore and VJ Armitage had really good chemistry. And that was a case, VJ ends up being the sacrificial lamb. And it's like, a lot of times the sacrificial lamb, it feels like it's checking off a box. But I felt really sad when VJ got it in Octopussy. But the problem in this movie, the stunt double thing, it's more obvious than it had been. And particularly on the Eiffel Tower sequence, it's very noticeable, and it kind of takes something out of it. And they had done great stunts. Mm-hmm. Actually, BJ Worth, did jump off the Eiffel Tower, doubling for Grace Jones, but also when Bond is chasing Mayday. And there's that boat, and Bond jumps off the bridge onto the boat, and Bond crashes through the boat. And it's clear it's like a mannequin going through when you see it go through the window. I mean, it was just, that's like, oh, ouch. Yeah.
Looking back at it now, too, I feel like, I always kind of looked at it as, from 62 to 2002, it was like one era of Bond, like one continuous narrative, but you kind of squint a little bit when you look at like the timeline. Like you don't expect Pierce Brosnan to be 70. You don't think of him like that. But looking at it now, it's like there definitely feels like there's more, no pun intended, of an era with the retirement of Lois Maxwell as Miss Moneypenny. And I want to bring her up in this conversation as well, because while we've had M change out, like I still feel like this is still the same Sir Miles, but having Moneypenny recast while keeping like Desmond Llewellyn, like it does put like a more of a semblance of time passing, because Moore was getting too old, and then like we can't have Lois Maxwell make, as she said, googly eyes at Timothy Dalton. Like it wouldn't, the age disparity was too great. So in some sense, it does feel like this is a 25-year-old character at this point who's been in the role for that long. But I wanted to point out, Lois Maxwell, because she is, one of the longest serving actors in the franchise. I think only Desmond Llewellyn would top her.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. Lois Maxwell did 14 movies, this being the 14th. Desmond did what? Hang on.
17?
You might be right. From Russia with Love. He
started From Russia with Love and ended in The World Is Not Enough.
And they skipped over Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
So movies 2 through 19.
2 through 19. One.
Yeah. So 17. Yeah.
But I definitely wanted to bring her up as, her legacy as Moneypenny. Like that is like everyone compares the new Bond to Connery. Like he's always the benchmark. Like she is the benchmark, I feel like, for Moneypenny, because, she was the first and established that rapport that, everyone else is followed in her footsteps.
Yeah. And also Lois Maxwell did first of all, she wasn't paid that well to play Miss Moneypenny.
Was anyone back in those days?
Well, no,
franchise? Yeah.
No, that's the point. In fact, 20 years ago, I was at this thing with Maude Adams, and she was saying, "Oh, they put you up in these great hotels," which is really good because they don't pay you that much. Yeah. She had a bigger role than Moneypenny twice, anyway. But she also, she is doing all sorts of things at the same time. I mentioned she was in an episode of The Avengers. That was in the middle of the Bond series, and then she was also
Operation
in
Kid Brother.
Operation Kid Brother. She was in 2 episodes of The Saint. She's in a presence. And Jerry Anderson marionette shows. She was a voice on Stingray, one of the regulars. So, yeah, she was working because she had to. But, yeah, for people my age, she was a presence in our lives, not just Bond. Bond right up there, but she was in all sorts of things.
Well, as we close out this conversation, I just want to touch one last time on Sir Roger Moore, as this is his final Bond film. Like, what is his impact and legacy going forward?
I would say, if I may, he proved that the series could move on from Connery. Because as late as 1972, people were still asking that question. Because you'd had Lazenby, but it was just the one movie. You didn't really know. And then once Connery left after Diamonds Are Forever, well, can this really continue on? And he showed it could. It was a different Bond, obviously, in terms of style. But I think his main contribution to the series, if you will, is that he showed Bond is bigger than any one actor. Cubby Broccoli always said that, but it took a while for him to be proven right.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
David, how do you feel about Roger Moore and what he's done for the franchise?
Yeah. Well, my feelings about his stint as Bond are mixed. It's not my favorite period by a long way, and I don't really appreciate it when Bond goes too far into humor. But I think his one legacy for me is he has proven that the only person on the planet who looks good in a safari suit is Sir Roger Moore. Nobody else can carry it off.
Which is quite an achievement in and of itself. So I have to, he's one of those, his era is one of those things that, that was the era that I grew up in primarily. And I definitely remember having the thought back when Octopussy Never Say Never Again came out, and there was that whole battle of the Bonds that, at the time I preferred Roger Moore, and that obviously with many actors to come after him, that's changed a lot. But his films aren't necessarily ones that I rewatch or go back to a whole bunch. And a lot of it is, like David said, the humor of it all isn't how I see the character these days. But it was formative for me. And, he's a big part of what helped me become a fan. Much like rewatching Adam West reruns of Batman 66, as a child, like that helped cement my Batman fandom. So he always has a special place in my heart because of that, even though he's not my favorite Bond. And just like I mentioned earlier, the way he carried himself after the role and how he would always make those connections and wasn't afraid to poke fun of himself, and the charity work that he did, for UNICEF, which, like the James Bond fan club, the UK branch that, 007 GP, I can't remember the name of it right now, but, like they carry on that tradition. Like I'm a member and I can't remember it, but they carry on the tradition of supporting UNICEF because Moore did. So his impact goes far beyond, the 2 hours you spent in the cinema or in front of your TV or your iPhone, into the real world and having that impact globally. And I think he's just one of the best ambassadors that, the franchise has ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'll always appreciate him for that. And, he was also the first, Bond that passed away, like the Eon Bond that passed away. And that, when that happened, that was like a considerable, even though he was getting older, like we all do, like that was shocking and did hurt in a way, for someone I've never met, like to have that part of my childhood no longer present.
Well, and also I remember hearing some anecdotes when David Niven died. His daughter was in the same house with a dead body, and like she needed some help, and she ended up calling him. He was in Nice, I think. The daughter was calling from Switzerland or something, and like he said, I'll be there. But he couldn't get a flight out of Nice, and so he drove, and it was like 18 hours or something.
Wow.
And Niven's son was describing this. It's like he didn't, other people might have begged off, but like he did this and kind of took charge of what was going on there because he and Niven were great friends and all. So, and also he has his moments. I mentioned Octopussy a few minutes ago, and like the scene where he finds VJ's dead body. That's a really nice thing. It's, very modestly played, but it's like it was a really good moment. So he had those, but I mean, he definitely took a lighter tone. Recently, I watched No Time to Die on Amazon Prime after it was such a downer. It's like I gotta like lift my spirits, so I ended up watching Live and Let Die right afterwards. It was just I just needed a lift, and that movie's got its issues too, but Javi, can I mention real quick before we go, There's an in-joke that's worth noting. In the scene sequence where Bond's on the rope underneath Zorin's blimp, they go toward this pyramid-shaped building where Bond's manhood is threatened by an antenna or something on the roof. That building is, or at least at the time, was the headquarters of Transamerica, the insurance and financial conglomerate that owned United Artists from 67 to 81. And they're the guys who put UA up for sale and, then led to MGM getting their hands on it. So I'm sure that was intentional. It's just, it's too much of a coincidence to think otherwise. That's all.
Well, Bill,
not particularly significant.
As we wrap up here, where can people find you on the internet? Anything to promote?
No, not at the moment. The Spy Command is at hmssweblog.wordpress.com. If you go down the left side, I've got links to some of my other websites. So best place to check me out.
David, how about you? Do you have anything you want to plug? Videos or articles that you've done recently? Any trips you've taken you want to tell people about?
Yeah. Well, you can find me at www.thejamesbonddossier.com, and it isn't live yet on there, but probably it will be by the time this episode is published. It is a report on about 30 hours I spent in Italy recently, and I visited Matera and Gravina, which was a very enjoyable trip. And, I think No Time to Die is a bit of a mixed bag, but I think one of the highlights were the Matera sequences, and it was great to go there and just get involved in the history, and also because it goes back, some say 9,000 years, and a Bond location which is spectacular.
30 Hours in Matera sounds like the title of something. I don't know what.
Yeah.
But
it actually
was the
wasn't
title of something.
It wasn't 30 hours actually in Matera. It was 30 hours in Italy, I think, end to end. But yeah, a bit hectic, but it was worthwhile.
Well, I will definitely be on the lookout for that when it finally drops. As for myself, you can find me on Instagram at The Bond Is Not Enough. And make sure you check out our YouTube channel where you can hear audio versions of the episodes of the podcasts. And there's also some video content as well that you can check out discussing all sorts of things like 007 First Light, the Connery 4K box set, and more. So make sure you like and subscribe to that as well. But that is going to do it for us this episode. Thank you so much for listening once again. And the 007 Files will return.